Let's also hopefully be able to confirm that we have back on live. Just waiting for Edward Niedermeyer. Oh, we're live. It works.
Okay.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. How many people do we have in stream? I'm not the broadcaster.
Yeah, I have no idea. This is so bad. You were like, you were like, let's do a stream, and
let's do a fucking stream.
I said yes, and here we are with zero infrastructure.
That's right. Just like Doge. This is like the Doge.
We're doging it.
Yeah. So I'm just sitting here out on the highway.
Who doges the Doge bags? We do.
Yeah. Yep. I'm just sitting out here on the highway. I've got a static smoking Tesla behind me, as usual.
Best car you've ever had, though, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I said,
Can't wait. You like this is great because now you get to buy the new one.
Yeah, that's right.
You can finally upgrade to the Cybertruck.
So did we wait? Okay, so I think we had talked about this in general. How many Cybertrucks are there in your area? Because like you're in Oregon. Like how many Cybertrucks are there?
Actually, so I live in Portland, Oregon, and you might be surprised by how many there actually are.
No, I wouldn't.
There are a few. I mean, they're not like, I assume in other places there are quite a few of them. The thing is, what people don't understand, and this is something like, I don't know, I grew up in like, my dad is super into cars and like car stuff. And so like something that he said that it took me a long time to really appreciate is that like how you notice cars on the road, like if you, for whatever reason, are noticing cars on the road is really subjective. Like you'll notice one certain car that you haven't seen before. And then you'll see it a lot more than you had otherwise. The Cybertruck is like a super extreme version of this, right? Where it's so like you cannot miss it. And so yeah, I feel like it definitely like, yeah, it amplifies what is already a really subjective thing, which is like, how popular is this vehicle actually based on how much I'm seeing it. But what's funny about the Cybertruck in Portland is, so I've been for 2 weeks now at the protests in front of the Tesla store. And both times I've had multiple Cybertrucks drive past and like wave or give the thumbs up or like, not I don't think we've had one honk, but like here in Portland, I don't understand the psychology behind this, but there are people who own Cybertrucks and are somehow sort of at least not flipping us off or even just like ignoring what's going on.
Huh, that's weird. But did people jeer at them, or like does them waving, does that like disarm you?
Listen, like I don't recommend driving your Cybertruck past a Tesla protest, like a Tesla takedown protest. I mean,
yeah.
Again, I feel like people do kind of buy them for like that kind of attention. So maybe in some places, the equation is I assume probably actually quite a bit different than it is in Portland. But yeah,
right. Well, I mean, so I'm in the Houston area, right? And so they've got like it's like from day one, they've just been all over. And like I swear to God, like every like realtor who's like, decided that they're like, right, they had like one good year and they're like, I'm gonna put half of my bonus this year into this thing, and they like, right, they dropped like 10 grand on like a wrap, and like so many of them thought it was cool. And like I've just like, you see people like, it was like first like people were like, what is that thing? And then like over time it got to be where like you can see like you can see people are just like, they're like, it's I've noticed it's like kind of, you see like this like disgust. I've always like, and I made a joke about it like when I was posting, I was just like, I thought it was funny since day one. Like you don't flip them off, like especially before it was like, I mean like it got really bad with like Musk and the branding, but I was like always thought it was funny to give eye contact with them, and you do like the thumbs down, right?
Yeah.
Like from and like for me that was always the funniest thing. It's like you don't like you don't want to be like fuck you. You would be like, yeah, you got this attention, and like we're gonna like you're gonna mock it. And I've always found that to be like very amusing.
I actually completely agree. Someone just mentioned this today or something recently, and I feel like it's really true. I think a lot of people who buy it, there is a weird oppositional defiance disorder thing going on or something, and to some extent, flipping people like that off gives them what they at least some of them, what they want. And the thumbs down is distinctly different. It's the I'm not mad, I'm disappointed, which
Yeah,
I
or
think
just like
for children is actually a very
right,
effective technique. I don't know. You know more about raising kids than I do, but I remember as a child that like is one thing if the parents are mad, but like if they're disappointed.
yeah. Well, because I always found it like funny with like car culture. So my dad was a Jeep guy, right? I used to do. I mean, like he had, he went through 2 different ones. He had them for continuously for like 20 years, right?
Okay.
It was like almost like 25 years. And so he, he did his own lifts. He did a tummy tuck. Like we used to go to Moab, and like it was always like charming, like the wave, and like it just like it's funny because it's like, like I think Tesla owners had this like solidarity for a long time. Then there were too many of them, and it became like kind of like a, it was like they got a little bit stale or whatever, or it became like a plebeian car almost, right? But then like the Cybertrucks like really switched that dynamic. So
I mean, the Cybertruck is so different than all the other, right? Like, there is no better way to illustrate the whole Tesla vibe shift than the Cybertruck, right? Like, because yeah, like Teslas have always, whether you love one or the other or don't, like they're all like not bad designs. Like even as a hater, like it's right, like they're they're what they are. The Cybertruck is like clearly this this other step.
yeah, I mean it's like deliberately ostentatious and like aggressive. Like it's which like I mean whatever. I mean like for a concept it's like fine, but like and so like I've actually always defended. I know like so for people like who I am not like for people who haven't been following this like is like this whole story like it all starts with the cars and we can talk about the rockets, but like for following it, like there's like people who hated it all the time, and like I've been like a hater for a long time of like the branding and whatever, and like how it's, but like I actually like one of my favorite things that I found like kind of like charmingly delightful is I love the Falcon Wing doors on the X. I know that it's terrible engineering. I know they're unreliable, but like that is a fucking cool, like that is cool because they're not like they're not fixed. They're not like the DeLorean, like it is a like stylistically it is, you don't see it while it's driving, but when it opens up it is like a cool thing. I've always defended them in terms of like aesthetics. That was like a cool design feature. Like I mean stupid,
Totally.
but cool one.
So yeah, no, and back in the day, like and it's funny that we could just be like, oh, hater stream. Like being a hater is like has changed so much. Like in the day, I really kind of tried to be careful about being. I knew I was gonna be labeled as a hater anyway, but I kind of was trying to play a game about it. And one of the things that like the reason it was like, what's the compromise position kind of between my criticisms and like what's going on at Tesla? And again, this is like sort of more earlier days of this stuff. And it was sort of like, look, like Tesla does have a lot of good things about it and it is building a powerful brand and it should just be a premium brand. Like it should just be Silicon Valley, Porsche or whatever, right? Like forget like the whole, we're trying to, and if Elon could get a handle on himself and like just be like, yeah, like we can build a profitable little business that also like influences sort of more by effect the rest of the industry and kind of pushes things forward the same way, Ferrari, many years ago pushed the auto industry in the way that it did, or other companies had huge influence, even though they're quite small. If he could have accepted that, like that to me seemed like, okay, this is a reasonable play, but like we've so far gone past that in terms of the valuation and all the other, just kind of
Yeah, well, I
bullshit.
mean, like the valuation is like kind of at the core of it, right?
It's
but
always
yes.
been.
Oh, yeah, Mark, to your comment, yes, I've owned a minivan since like we first had kids, and like I love minivans, love the doors, love minivans. I think it's the best car that's ever been made in America, and I'm like again living like so I grew up in Colorado and like moving to Texas and like everyone just driving like the big SUVs like always like kind of disgusted me. I'm like, what? Like you like why? I mean, it's like I don't know. I'm a big minivan defender, so.
But no one was making like vehicles with doors, right? And with good reason. Like it was an absolute
engineering
nightmare. Yeah. Like the reality of what that all entailed, and like that the Model X has probably never made Tesla money. Like I have to imagine. I don't know. Like maybe a little bit, but like basically nothing.
Yeah, I would imagine just like on the extra, like right, like the warranty. If you look at like if you actually look at their financials, like that's like when like the per unit like warranty, like the extra, like they use the same amount of reserves, but that number on like on a per model basis, like it really expanded there. And yeah, it makes sense, right? You add this, like complicated extra set. I mean, like the doors, I can't even imagine like fixing them and adjusting them. Like you just like pump, because if you read the threads back in the day, right? So like your forum posts, like people would have to go in and get them adjusted all the time, and those man that up. So
yeah, every like software updates would just kind of randomly break them in strange new ways. And yeah, no, it was like it was functionally a nightmare. But again, it was like part of the whole Tesla thing, right? Of like creating a spectacle that then turns into the stock price thing. What's fascinating to me though about about having sort of advocated at one point for like, oh, these guys should just be this like premium high end thing, is that like Elon clearly doesn't want to deliver on the original master plan, right? Like he doesn't want to make affordable cars, and the book that I wrote sort of argues like there are good reasons for that. Like it's actually one of the few ways in which he seems to at least intuit sort of the limitations of how he does things. And so, but what's interesting is, and like this is just a rumor, right? So I got to be very, this is not reported. This is not. It could be. I think it may, there may be some, yeah, and it's not just one. There's apparently the Roadster, the Tesla Roadster thing is that there is some version of it, but that like it's going to be like this carbon fiber thing that's like twice as, but then it's, so in a way, right? So Cybertruck, and then if this is true, this sort of like $500,000 versus $250,000
right.
Roadster. Again, it, what it means that it, whether it's in development, whether it's in different stages of development, there's so many, and again, like the sourcing is not good on this, but it signals, I think, like that Elon, not for strategic reasons, just kind of because the company is trailing in his personal wake, that he wants to do these like, very limited edition, small, expensive the things that I was saying like a decade ago, that like, if this is sort of the vision that makes sense for this company. So I don't know. It's kind
Right,
of
but that's, I guess that's kind of like the original sin of both like Musk and like growing up in that Silicon Valley culture, is that you're like bespoke, like, right? So if you want to be a Lamborghini, right, or you want to be, I mean, like, any sort of like, Maserati or whatever, like you're like your market's limited, and like they have extremely high margins, but like you're just like you're limited, and the Silicon Valley model. And I think this is like one of the things that's like really frustrating, is you see it like kind of just push into other industries where they're just like, right, they're like, well, we have to increase, right, our top line, because that's how you get like incremental margin growth, right? Because it's through software. Because again, like if you talk about like, from like an accounting standpoint, if you're Microsoft, right, and you're making the original Windows that came out on like floppy disks or a CD-ROM, like your incremental costs for each Windows CD that you ship out, it starts, you basically have negative operating margins, and then as you add more, those operating margins go up to 70%, because the incremental cost of a CD that you're selling for $300 is $1 or whatever it is. Yeah. And so that, I think that's the problem, is that like that vision that you had for Tesla was probably right in that they were like good at that, but when you promote your wealth, when the wealth becomes the Silicon Valley model, you have to, that top line growth has to happen, and that's not going to happen without volume. And then again, you're not going to have profit margins, because car making is not a very good business, and so that forces you to do fraudulent and promotional things, which is kind of the whole story of Tesla, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the idea that everything should be a software sort of style business model is like one of the most toxic ideas to infect capitalism, I guess, in a while. And yeah, like, so it's crazy how many bad things that are happening you can sort of trace to some of yeah, to some of that. And I was just sort of talking to Paris Marx about the fact that robotic, like, the funny thing about Elon and the robots thing, and there is this sort of Silicon Valley robotics trend, but like Silicon Valley has actually been really bad at robots historically. There's the places where the real robotics talent is, like Carnegie Mellon and like MIT,
Right.
sort of Northeast, like that's where, so, and
China.
globally of course,
Yeah.
as well. But like Silicon Valley hasn't traditionally done well because robotics is inherently a lot about like understanding specific tasks well enough to know when it makes sense to automate them. It's a complex problem where it's not just like you can't just impose automate. Like, I mean, this has been tried, right, by Elon famously with the alien dreadnought, where they spent $2 billion trying to make the fully automated line that ended up having to make cars by hand in a tent. And then there were earlier lessons of this, there examples of this that we at the time were like, Elon, like, you should look at when people have tried this before, right? Like, robotics is about understanding the task, right, well enough to know when it makes sense to be automated, like whether it's an efficiency thing or it's a dangerous thing or whatever else. There's like a logic to robotics, but it's a case by case thing. And like the technology is becoming more, I think, generalizable in some ways, but the idea that like, the humanoid, it's all part of the whole AGI fantasy thing too. And I don't know, but it's interesting because I think, this Silicon Valley way of thinking about technology has come to represent the rest of technology. And I think it's so important to like help people understand that this is not all the same stuff, right? Like there are whole chunks of technology that can't really play by the Silicon Valley game, even though now they're sort of like Elon and others are trying to sort of
right. And I think
possible.
So that's like something you deal with when you deal with like, right. So if you're setting up a factory, right, or you're like a chemical process, and you've got these different controllers and these systems, like you have to think about how humans interacted with them, and like there's this big like push, like, right, we automate everything, we like do all of that, but like it's like because you look at like, right, you look at the operating cost, right, of the robot. Of course, you don't think about all the tweaks that have to be done, the engineer that has to fix it, all that good stuff. Like you're just like, well, like, I have to pay this person, I have to make sure they don't die. If I build a robot, then they'll just do the same mechanical task. But even like if you look at like, and this is actually what I find really fascinating, is that like you can have a robot that can make like a coffee drink, for example, because it's just a fluid, right? And I mean, even then it'll struggle with it. But like if you've seen like the like they for like a decade now, they've been trying to get these like line bots that can do things like flip a burger or whatever. But if you look at like even like a thing like an egg, right? So if you're cracking an egg, and people have seen these robots before, is that the yolk inside the egg is part liquid, it's part solid, it's got a different mass. And so when you slide that egg, right, when you crack it and slide it out, it's not gonna behave like a pure like liquid. And so in order to program and efficiently, have the robot be able to move the spatula, a quarter centimeter to the left or whatever, like kind of adapt to these situations, like humans do it intuitively. Obviously people get better with training. And so like, I think that's kind of like if you want to get into like a full, like, Marxist discussion about like how like we treat, like, right, when people say like working class jobs in the US, they're always like, oh, well, it's like some noble thing, like, right, you're a machinist or whatever. But like waiting tables takes skill, being a line cook takes skill, because there are things that humans do that are intuitive and that are part inherently intelligent, but also skills you have to learn. I think Silicon Valley, and we see this with AI, it's like, no, we're just going to chop all that stuff out. And it's a sickness, and it's been there, and now it's just like we kind of see. I think I wanted to set this up with you because we see the end product of that is playing out for everyone to see and like stare at horror in. And I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, well, and the real like kind of tragic part for me, I mean, I remember when the whole alien dreadnought thing, which in 2016, which was probably of all of the bullshit that Elon has done, like even the battery swap thing, like that sort of started it. But it was the alien dreadnought that was like, oh my God, like this guy is drunk, is high on his own supply. When that crashed and burned, and like the whole production hell and everything, like he had a quote that was like, humans are underrated. And I was like, for a very brief moment, I was like, wait a second, like, is he is he gonna get it? Like, is this actually a lesson being learned here, or like, and no, and if
Narrator, it was
anything,
not
it's
a lesson. Right?
yeah. Um,
Yeah, and like
instead he had a botched dick surgery,
allegedly.
allegedly.
Yeah. So we'll just we're gonna keep that. And like that's a nice thing is like, yeah, now like, dude, like we can just like, right? It's like a government official, it's like I mean not really one, but like the level that you have to go to actually successfully sue for slander is just so much higher now. So we can talk about his botched dick surgery. Like
I don't think I'm currently wearing my reasonableness pants. So
Yeah.
and there's a lot of corporate puffery here going on for me. You know, I don't know about you specifically, but I've been advised by counsel that corporate puffery is the order of the day.
Wait, what the Alien Dreadnought? What like stupid sci-fi reference is that? Is that like is that like a Philip K. Dick book thing?
No, this is actually like, so I haven't tracked on it. It's actually a good question. There's probably someone else who said it first, but it became an Elon fixation, and it was sort of like one of the earlier signs also that he was kind of developing these sorts of, anyway, like, yeah. but around Tesla, it was like the UAD. It was Unstoppable Alien Dreadnought. It was back when he was coming up with his own stuff a little bit more, I think. And again, maybe someone else had said it, but at Tesla, and it was like, and people who like knew manufacturing and stuff, and who were sort of there, and a lot of them for the mission and whatever, were like, oh my god, the UAD meetings, like, and it was just like was part of the process of Tesla becoming. It was already pretty culty, right? But becoming the kind of turbo cult it is today, which also means, like none of the amazing talent that they were, managed to attract over the years is still there either. So.
Right. And like, for me, like, so I guess like I'm like, this is just like a me thing. Like, I just like, I know a lot of people like really cringe at like the specifically sci-fi names. I hate the Giga stuff because I think like, right. Cause it's like, it's a reference to, a numerical, whatever, like, but like, I don't know, like, I like that stuff has never like bothered me. Like what bothered me during that whole episode or when he was like talking about it was like volumetric efficiency, like that shit was just like, he's just like, we have a floor, and it's like, well, okay. But like, again, if you have a part, right, and you've got like a fixed, you've got a fixed, XY surface, right? Like every time you're adding like an additional dimension, like guess what? Like it's just like everything gets more complex. And so it's just be like, oh, we only have like limited space, but like the Fremont factory was a massive building. Like they had like massive amounts of property. Like when you're talking about volumetric efficiency in like, one of the biggest by land area, car factories that they'd gotten for so cheap. Like it was just like, why does it matter if you're volumetrically efficient? Like,
yeah, well, that's what everybody in the auto industry said too. I mean, I was, that was a time of my life where I was, talking to a lot of people, making decisions in the auto industry, and like people could not process it, and again, like I think it was, we've talked a lot over the years about like the realization, and like I think one of the interesting things about the realization is that it's not always, I don't know, like I feel like people were working so hard, like they were having the realization, but they didn't want the fight. You know what I mean? They didn't want to take him on, and so it just put them in a really bad spot. And again, I don't. We've all been, complicit sort of in some way in this whole Elon thing happening the way it has, I think, to some extent. But like, I think it's not about like judging anybody, but I think one of the lessons is that, there've just been so many people who've known what they're doing and who have seen this stuff and who have known that it was absolute bullshit and that they were completely, that the capital markets are being lied to. And what's really frustrating about it is it's like, this guy's pissing in your pool, right? It's not just that, he's getting away with it. It's that he's poisoning the well kind of for everybody who's in that industry then, because now this is a tune that everyone has to sort of dance to in a weird way. And there's like millions of not millions, but like so many examples of this happening in so many different spaces where now like giga this and giga that have just become these terms that people start to use, and like all of these just horrible ways that he's poisoned it.
Did you ever hear that clip? It was like in was it like a BMW? No, was it a VW? I think VW was talking about like some new assembly process, and like one of the analysts on their call, and they're like talking about it, like, right, and like these like big car companies, like they talk about like tooling, and like if you're an auto analyst, like you have to know this shit, like, and the auto industry guys, they have like no, like they just have no tolerance. It's like, no, you have to learn, like, and you have to learn what a WIP is. You have to learn what, when we talk about Kanban and do-overs and like all this stuff, when they talk about it, they're like, no, you have to like if we're gonna call you up to like ask a question, or if we're gonna engage with you, like you have to like know some of these basic terms. They're interchangeable everywhere, right? And so like I remember like there was like an analyst who was like asked like the VW, like it was like the CTO or something, and he was like, oh, are you gonna be installing like gigacasting? And like you could just like that, I don't think that was on video, but like you could like somehow you could hear the steam coming out of his ears, even though that's just a thing that happens in cartoons. Like you could hear it because it was just like he was just like why am I answering this question of like a made up thing that comes from like a guy that doesn't know what he's talking about? And like that's always like fascinated me. Like, are you doing gigacasting at VW? And it's like what the fuck is gigacasting? It's just like anyway.
Big castings. Which if if it's bigger, it must be better.
Right.
Like,
well, I mean, I get back.
Literally can't argue with that. No, but I mean, I think like what so I kind of got into auto industry stuff like by accident. Just sort of an opportunity that came across when I needed one. And but one of the things I've always like appreciated about the auto industry is that it's these giant human machine systems, right? That the machine that builds the machine, and Elon's super insightful formulation, right? But like the systems that make up that are necessary to create cars are so big and so complex and so sprawling that like there's no room for bullshit really in that. I mean, there is, like, obviously in any system, like, things happen,
right.
but it is a system that rewards like no bullshit and minding the details and all these things. And I'm attracted to that because I'm not that kind of person. You know what I mean? Like I'm more sort of like, I'm not like Elon, but I'm more in that sort of realm personality wise than the kinds that succeed at these big sort of, industrial kind of organizations. But so I have a lot of respect for what that takes. And that was always what attracted me to it. And so again, that's like the core of the whole thesis of the first book that I wrote, which is like the whole way that this guy is going about this. Again, like, it's doing some creative stuff and at small scale, you can still have an influence and build a business around that. But like the whole thing of we're going to build cars for everyone was always bullshit because he wasn't that kind of serious, detail oriented, accountability oriented, right? That kind of person.
It's a tough business and it can be exciting, but it's like a boring business, right? And like I think that's like, thing is like that motherfucker gets bored with stuff, right?
And that's also the opportunity. That's why he was able to come in and put on a show. And I think too, there's like this buried thing in the American consciousness where like they know on some level, like it's like the that sort of Detroit was sort of the original Silicon, or like the Silicon Valley of the 20th century. And so this idea of a car guy sort of showing you the future and being the showman is like, it's sort of baked into our culture somehow in a way that it made sense. Like people didn't know they were missing it until Elon showed up and started doing it. But like that personality had been drummed out of the car business for really, really, really good reasons.
But the whole thing was like Ford was successful because they were just brutally efficient. Like that was it. There was no, like there wasn't like famously, like, right. I mean, obviously over time they added pizzazz and different models, but like, right. Like the reason that Ford became the powerhouse they were is because of like brutal efficiency. Like it couldn't be anyway. I mean, like,
I mean, like Ford was like Elon, where it was like, he decided that he knew what the secret was. Like he had it figured out. But
he was actually did.
But no, and at a very particular moment, he 100% did. And obviously, like he birthed the modern industry. But like Elon, he couldn't change. He couldn't adapt. He was stuck in it. And by the way, people don't realize Henry Ford was also very much like a cultural figure, the way Elon is as well. There's so many like that parallel is is endlessly fascinating. But the Ford was in that era when there were like literally thousands of car companies.
Yep.
And there were a lot of them run by just like rich guys who thought it was a cool thing to do and thought that they were the bro to make it, extra epic. And that was all replaced ultimately by sort of the Toyota system, which is like, no, like this is there was this break where it was like, you have to have sort of like values essentially, and like to have a culture that is bigger than one person. And that like if everyone kind of buys into that culture, then you create this almost self-governing kind of thing. And that was like sort of the really fundamental thing. And that's why in this, that happened in sort of the 80s and 90s. And then by now, or by the time Elon came along, all of the execs in the auto industry, almost all of them were just like these boring suits. And so the space was wide open for him to waltz in and make a splash.
Right.
And unfortunately, there was no one in that business who really had the guts to take him on. And it's really unfortunate because, look what happened. And not just the auto industry. Lots of people could have done a lot more. Again, I'm really not trying to judge anyone. It's just like, all the more reason to try and do something now while we can. So
right, yeah, and I think that's like, and so like just like, so the key difference, right? And just correct me, because auto history better than I do. So the key difference in like the Ford system, if I'm right, it's like, right, everyone's a cog in the machine, and you're the same cog, right? Like you're always going to be turning these 5 screws on the hubcap like all day long.
Yes.
Whereas like Toyota expects you to know each part of the station, and you need to have like, you need to be able to think and work with 1 to 2 steps. So it's still a machine, but it's like more of like a fluid back and forth instead of just like the cog can only turn this way. Like that was like the big revolution, right?
Yeah, and there were a lot of other things that happened along the way that weren't just related to the Toyota, right? So like it's like unions happened, for example, right after
people realize you get repetitive stress syndrome if you just
exactly right. So that kind of stuff, it became obvious that, right, like at some point human labor became valuable, and the capital, the money realized that like, hey, like it's actually good if we don't just work people to the bone. Like it's actually better for us too to have something that's a little bit more, again, this is one of the really frustrating things for years. I think we've talked about this before, is like people assume that Silicon Valley is like, they think of industrial companies as like these old, like Dickensian, like Henry Ford. They think they have the Henry Ford model. And the reality is that like Elon is way more like Henry Ford than anybody else in the auto industry for a whole bunch of reasons, and none of them good.
And Google has turned into like, right, like I think this is actually one of the things I've enjoyed, like in a sicko way, is like, right, I spent a lot of time in oil and gas and then petrochemicals because of my background was in chemistry and then engineering, and I love that industry. I think it's so interesting. I mean, obviously there's like tons of bad externalities, and there's certain parts of the industry I wish would just go away, but it's like, it's an interesting place to work. There's super smart people. But like, I think like what was really annoying for me is when I was living in like a really like liberal and blue area like that, but it was like a yuppie. And like, I had a lot of friends that like worked as like, they worked as like business people, like legal for Google. And they would just like sneer at me. Right. This was back in like, it was like back in like 2010 or whatever. Yeah. And they'd be like, oh, you work in oil. Oh, and it's just like, I'm really enjoying this, because it's like, no, actually, like, I think people have realized, right? Because there was a time, right, that where it's just like, no, tech was like really, like, Google's like, don't be evil thing. Like people believed it. And I think seeing that pass and be like, oh no, this stuff is cyclical. It all passes. Because I point this out to people a lot, is that if you look at surveys of companies, right, and you look at who over time, like which companies have the most satisfied workers, and like people just think right now, they just think, oh well, it's like tech, because it's had, because the labor has been so valuable, and like the employees are well compensated, and like that is like, people just think it's always been that way since the second Google or Amazon founded. But if you actually look in like the mid to 2000s into like 2010 or 2012 even, it was always like oil. And the reason is because oil was going through like kind of a generationally good profitability. And so like people got paid a lot. They got paid not as much as tech, but they got paid a lot in stock options. And guess what? Your stock options are going up. Company gives you better bonuses. Company's like less stressed. You're not feeling like you're going to get cut all the time. And guess what? the quality of work life there goes up because things are macroeconomically good for the company. And so it's really funny how that's like,
Yeah.
Tech
No,
is,
it was so in it was what during the whole Alien Dreadnought thing, this guy Bertel Schmidt, I sort of worked Volkswagen, we sort of people started being like, hey, is this whole like making cars in a 10 thing normal and stuff? And we were like, wow, like people are like interested in auto manufacturing. And like it's so funny. This is such a classic like Twitter thing. We just were like, he knew someone who was like worked at a travel agency. We both knew people at car companies that we put together this like round the world tour of car factories. And anyway, it was really cool. People just we just put it on Twitter. We got enough people together to actually go on this thing that it actually like made sense. It worked out financially, and it was a really wild experience. But one of the biggest like kind of memories I have from that was, Elon, again, he just sort of was at this like, point of the Alien Dreadnought thing falling apart, and like, getting to the point of humans, are underrated, that whole thing. And Toyota, we spent like 2 days at Toyota City in Japan as part of this tour, and like they had this whole brand new training center, and like people were asking like, well, what about the robots, right? Like, why are you investing all this money in human training? And they explained the whole thing of like, there's no point in putting a robot in there until the human has sort of, the Kaizen process, the continuous improvement process. And what it just made me realize that like industrial companies are weirdly humanistic compared to tech. Again, like I don't want to put any major, automaker industrial company on a pedestal here, and like they all need to be held accountable as well. But like the tech sector has a weird anti-humanism to it that like I found very troubling for a really long time.
So I think my view on it is, right, so like you do process safety long enough, right? You do like your PSSRs, your HAZOPs when you're upgrading or whatever, like a chemical process, right? And this is like a perfect example. So when you're setting up a plant, like over time, like, these electrical controllers for things like valves, actuators, all this stuff, like, right, you replace like the big gate valves and little turn valves. You can start you can make them all electric remote control. You can watch from a control room in the screen, you can watch from a screen in the control room. And the temptation is like, well, we don't want our guys to like have to walk out into the plant because you've got ethylene oxide here, and it's going into this vessel here, and you've got this other reactant there. And it's like, well, why do we have them walk around? And it turns out that sometimes there's like, if you're opening a valve, right, part of the process is opening the valve. And it's not something you have to like precise open, it's either open or close, right? It's like a gate valve that's got to stop. It's either open or close. And it turns out like you find, if you actually go through this, if you say, hey, we're upgrading the system and we want to turn this manual valve to an electronic valve, you have to ask, like, is the valve there? Does it serve any purpose besides just opening and closing? And it turns out you go and look, and it turns out that the operators, when they go out to that plant, if you didn't change anything else, like part of going out to that plant is there's like something that wasn't written down in procedure, and we fixed it, but it's like there's a certain type of vibration you'll see in the pipes. You'll see the pipe vibrating, and like these guys, they've all like trained on it. They've got like their whatever, and so there's actually a like, right, you can have all your alarms to make sure stuff doesn't blow up. You have temperatures, you have all this stuff, but there's actually like a human process, a human check to make sure that everything's like safe and okay. That wasn't documented and wasn't in procedure, and it should have, but it actually provided a safety step that we didn't even know about until we could document it. And so just by even talking about it, but turns out just switching everything to electronic, you're actually like, it's by automating it and by saying like, I can open a valve exactly 54% and get like perfect flow. Maybe there's something with the human that you it's the same thing with that fry cook, is that if you are underestimating the innate abilities that humans have, it's like the same thing driving, right? We talk about
like you're 100%.
Like when you hear stuff, like you don't hear stuff just in your left and right. You hear it in all directions. You have pressure changes, like slight changes in light. It's not just a flat visual field. Yeah. It's like when people say like, I sense something behind me, like, that feeling when someone's behind you, it's because a little bit of light at the corner of your eye or whatever, or it's like a sound, or you feel like a slight breeze against your neck. Like we underestimate our intuition for stuff. And if we say, oh, I can replace this with like an algorithm that's perfect, then maybe you can, maybe sometimes it's better. Like for an adding machine or whatever, like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, you get more complex, especially systems that interface with humans, which is like social media. Then if you automate stuff, then if it doesn't match the user's brain, and coding never will, then you're going to be able to do things like, I don't know, help facilitate a genocide in Myanmar, all that good stuff, which is a famous Facebook thing. But
yeah, well, I think like reliability is like this very right. And right. I think like, large language models and stuff like just, yeah, like it's one thing to be impressed by the spectacle of like, look what technology can do. And I feel like kind of culturally we've been in that mode for kind of since the iPhone almost, of like, look what technology can do. We've been this era of like expectation, and Elon Musk has been surfing this thing, right? Like the whole time, and somehow making the wave bigger than it was anyway. But I think like the thing that cuts through that is, well, like how reliably good is it actually, right? It's not like, and this is for me, the whole automated driving thing is that this is what it's all about, right? It's like people get seduced by the vision, and but the reality is right, like you can't, there is no, and like you can get some value out of watching automated vehicle or like automated driving systems, like video or whatever, but like the reality is that we can't judge these systems until they do millions and millions and millions of miles, like, and even like the gold standard is Waymo, which has 25 million miles, I think driverless, certainly autonomous. In the US, humans drive 3 trillion miles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, yeah, like, oh, we're bad at driving. Well, over 3 trillion miles, 40,000 people die. And again, that number is going up. It's bad. We should do all we can to stop it. But people are really quick to believe that like technology are somehow better than human. And I think this is like, when you look at a lot of the things that are going wrong, it all seems really overwhelming. And I think when it comes, if you kind of boil them all down to one thing that connects at least a lot of them, it's that like human beings are really, really undervalued, and that like we need to start looking at people, and seeing the kind of almost infinite potential that we've been sort of looking at technology with, right? And that was sort of the thing that hit me when I came back from the factory tour thing. It was like people at this facility, this Toyota City kind of thing, they saw like human being, like there's always so much more potential in humans to think creatively about problems and solutions, and to even just in prosaic factory scenarios even, and they saw that potential in people, whereas I feel like in Silicon Valley and in the parts of the US now that we've been like really infected with the way they think about things, like that's how people think about technology, is like, oh, technology can just solve all these problems for us. And it's like, no, like we have to solve problems together. Like that's been the deal since humans existed and long before. And like, that's the deal, and technology is going to save us from that. Like,
right. And I think like AI is like a great illustration of it, right? Because it's like again, they want to do the same thing. They want to say, like these large language, like the models, they can do some incredible stuff. Like you can use it, but like, I mean, I think like, right. You see people do it. And like, I've seen, like, I pay attention to a lot of, partially for the type of research I do for my work. Like, right. You see like just people talking about stuff on Reddit, and they'll like get into fights, and someone just like type an answer into like Grok or, Chat GPT, like as like it's like a Google search or whatever. And it's like, well, what was the point of posting that into Reddit? Like they just like, or they'll just take one part of it. And I'm like, it can be a good tool. It can be actually a fabulous tool. But as soon as you look at it as like a start to finish solution, which is again, that gets to the core motivation that they desperately want these tools to replace the entirety of a worker instead of making workers more efficient, more productive, so we can have, so maybe like, here's the thing, is like, here's the radical thing. And it isn't really radical because they're doing it in places in Europe, is people are like, well, isn't it going to like make jobs redundant? I was like, well, that's why you have the state and like maybe why do we have a 40-hour work week? What if it's a 30-hour work week? You know what I mean? Like, so I don't like, if we look at it as a tool instead of a replacement for human beings. And I think that like kind of like, sociopathy, I think that's like people like you and I have observed it, and we've seen how they've kind of been like, you don't want to say like, right, these guys are the only ones that break the law. They're doing it in new ways that are really kind of distressing. They're different. And so seeing that play out, and then now on all the horrible things we saw that were limited to, a few 100,000 cars a year, or, this industry or this location or this subset of people, it's now we're exposing that the very bad parts of that to the entire nation, and then into the entire world. And I think that's the part that really terrifies me about Musk and Trump. I mean, it's truly horrifying. And if you like, just like, I don't even think that's like, honestly, don't even think that's partisan now. It is like truly horrifying. And I don't know, it's bad.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is why I feel like, just the whole Tesla takedown thing is for me like a, something I'm hanging on to, because, the reality is that, right, it's all bad, but like, if it's happening and we could be, it doesn't have to be happening. Like I genuinely, you know what I mean? Like there is, I don't know. Like we're very disconnected from, in this country, I think in particular, our power, the power of collective action, essentially, right? Like, and
Right.
I get it, right? Culturally, like we've always been this very individualistic kind of society, and I think it's a turning point, right? Like either that's the deal, either we're all going to be crabs in a bucket forever, right? Or I think at this point, right? And again, like the constitutional order is in my view pretty much at stake here, and so I think there's a kind of a fundamental turning point on that.
Did you read the Clara Jeffrey post today on Mother Jones?
I did not.
Elon Musk, apartheid, and America's new boycott movement.
I have not read that. No, it sounds great though. I've seen her. She's been posting.
You should read it. She talks about her personal experience in like watching the anti-apartheid movement, like as a college student, and she goes back. She actually does a really good job of framing it. She goes back and forth to now and whatever. And so like, okay, so I guess let me just grill you on this. Like I have not gone to any of the protests. I saw there were like a few locally. I see enough of them in my neighborhood, and I feel like my glaring it's accomplishing something. But okay, I guess what have you seen that's like, right? I've seen like, you're like one of the people that pushed it on, but like what has like surprised you, and what do you think, like what have you seen that's been like the most positive or exciting that's come out of it? I guess that's what I'm kind of curious to see, like in person.
Yeah, well, so it's a good question. And especially kind of in light of, I don't know, some of the discourse around like, the role of like violence and vandalism and everything else. Because, when I sort of got into writing about Elon and like really the process of the last 10 years for me, and my relationship with Elon over the last 10 years has been one of being disillusioned about the ability to use information to change the world. Like we have descended into
man.
And no, I mean, this is right. This is why we've been chatting about this stuff for a really long time. Like I think we grew up sort of believing, or that like talking about things and sharing information kind of allows us all to be able to separate the better from the less good, and make progress together and stuff. And I've I really lost a lot of faith in that. And what I think is really exciting for me is that, like, for the first time, I think especially so like in Portland, right, there's people who like kind of just go to protests a lot, and I'm not judging like that. Good for them. They care a lot about the world.
City, right?
And there's like a tradition of it here, and people are part of that tradition. And what was really interesting was like talking to some people like that who were going to the protests anyway. They didn't need a reason to do it. And when I explained to them, like, hey, like, this isn't just about going out and like stating our values. Like, we can, there's a broader goal here of like, if we can stigmatize this brand, if we can cut it off from, the whole strategy. I won't go into it right now, but like, and they were like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And they responded to that. But then also like people who I've spoken to have been like, I am people clearly not activists, right? People who don't do a lot of like, especially in person or like, sort of that kind of stuff. It's the idea that like that there is this possibility, and that like, we all are so conditioned to think of billionaires as being invulnerable in this society. And you and I have watched Elon get away with, thing after thing after thing after thing. So I get it. Like I get why people, and I get why people, when they see this opportunity that like, oh my God, like we could do something about this, it's possible. And seeing how people respond to that, like that's brought me back in a weird way. Like it's sort of wiped away some of the cynicism I had, because what it proves is we don't have to organize. Like, we don't have to necessarily even organize in the traditional sense. I don't have to get people's emails, and you know what I mean? Like we have the tools now, especially with Blue Sky, as something that is not something the billionaires can just turn off, right? That we have the opportunity to build something that is decentralized. And for me to be able to take, and to take the information that we have about this company to say sort of like, here's the weak point, right? This is the Death Star. Here's the thermal port. Right. And once people know where it is, again, like what, I don't want responsibility for what everyone's going to do. I'm not trying to encourage people to do anything illegal or, violent. I personally,
you don't have to. Like, I don't have a problem. Like, honestly, like I like people smashing a window there, and like, I mean, like with how much damage he's caused, like I'm not gonna personally get upset over it. But you don't have to. Like, all you have to do is be like, no, this is actually a stupid loser car, and like you get like some people like the activism really works on like, no, you were directly funding this, but like honestly, like 90% of it, like actually this is like fucking not cool. Like that was, I mean, like that's the reason that they were able to sell cars at higher gross margins, even if they had all these inefficient processes on the background. It was a cool handbag that like, right, it was the hot handbag for a couple of years that like they were able, and like if you just be like, no, actually this is fucking lame, and like everyone says, oh, that's lame, I don't want to get yelled at, I don't want people to be like, I don't want people to look at me and say, am I a Nazi for driving this car? Like yeah, like shame is like fucking amazing. So I think it's
no, I think kind of like the line that I'm trying to walk, at least, is one of like, I'm a easygoing, again, like I'm the kind of guy that wants to believe that we can talk about things that make things better. That's for better or for worse, right? Like that's kind of the deal. But the other part of this is like, if we don't make that work, like if we can't, right? Like again, like this is right. The nonviolent means to cutting, fucking with Tesla's business, and that is something I want to channel people towards, because in the absence of other alternatives, people are angry. People are right to be angry. And what are they going to do about it?
There's like, if right. So if you've got a Congress that won't do anything, you've got a president, you've got basically the acting president who is not elected. Courts take too long. Like literally, there's nothing else you can do to fight back. And I've posted this a bunch on Blue Sky. Like, and I've seen it. Like I'm telling you, like fucking suburban moms, like people that like 4 years ago would have told you, like, I guess it was like 5 years ago, like, well, I guess I had to go with Biden because like Bernie's too, this, that, and the other, right? And then like 4.5 years later, some guy executes a healthcare executive, and then people, like half the internet's cheering over it, which I was taken aback by, like, right? And I'm like super, I guess what I'm saying is like I've never seen like people. There was this weird response after the election where people are like, oh, well, there's no like pussy hat, pink hat protest or whatever, and like, yeah, because I think people were like, well, we know what we're gonna get into, and like whatever, and it was so much worse. But I think I've never seen so many like radicalized like wine mom types, like suburban mom types. Like people are fucking pissed.
Here's to you. I'll have a hard time beating the wine mom allegations. No, but look, like
you even got the sweater, man. That's a very wine mom sweater. Or
oh yeah, man. No, it's kind of more of an old man sweater, really. Okay, but yeah, we're splitting hairs at this point. No, look, like the technology has given us a lot of tools, and I think like part of this problem, right? Like again, kind of getting back to what we're saying about Elon, like yeah, he's bad, but like also like there's just been so many opportunities to say no. So actually today, so the Carlos Slim, again, like here we are, like I don't want to put a billionaire on a pedestal or anything, but this man like was like, no, fuck you. Like we were going to do business. You spread some conspiracy shit about, about me being affiliated with. Fuck you! Like tens of billions of dollars of business in Mexico is now just gone.
All that number is wrong.
Whatever. I don't care. It's symbolically. Yes, it shows what's been lacking.
Yeah.
That's my point. And I'm encouraging, everyday folks to do what little they can here and there to help this Tesla takedown thing happen. Implicit in that is kind of a fuck you to everybody who has actual power, because what the hell have you done?
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And I think that's like the whole thing is like, there's nothing like, right. You're untouchable directly. Right. But there's like, if you know that Musk's wealth is, somewhere between transitory and not as high as it is. And like, it's not like 100% fake, but it's like mostly fake. It's like mostly based off of like leveraged bets into different things, right? There's no like fundamental.
How does Tesla become just another car? Like,
right.
If you understand these things,
without going through bankruptcy, but we'll get there eventually. Maybe.
Yeah, but even then, there's some pieces, but yeah, it's yeah.
And so I was actually looking for a thing I was working on. I was actually looking at, if you go back and look, I know you know this, Ed, right? So in like 2006, Volvo had like their best year ever, right? And they'd sold like 400 and something thousand cars, right? And like literally 3.5 years later, they were bankrupt. Their, as a percentage of revenues, is actually really fascinating. As a percentage of revenues, their net current assets minus current liabilities as a percentage of revenue is like identical to where Tesla's is right now. And so I'm not saying that's going to happen, but then if you go back and take it to its logical step, and if you say, okay, Tesla is like 4 times as big as, both in terms of revenue and in terms of volume, as VW was at its peak, at Volvo when it was at its peak. Right. So it's this company that's, very successful, very well loved company, actually, like, even though like,
but ultimately in an industry that runs on scale.
Right. And they ended up going bankrupt and were sold to Geely for $1.2 billion. And so taken to its logical extreme, like, it's like, I mean, the idea, it seems ludicrous, but like, right, in 3 years, you can see like that Tesla's sold to, I don't know, some other company, or maybe it's not. Maybe it does become the Nazi car and everyone just hates it. But I mean, maybe it's sold for 10 billion and equity holders get nothing. It's not unheard of, and people act like it's not. And I think
it's such a unique situation. Like that's the thing is that we, I challenge anyone to say that, right? Like, who's gonna predict how, what's going to happen when there is just no precedent that looks anything like what we're seeing now, right? Like politically, business, like there's just, I mean, this is what makes it, fascinating to watch. This is what makes it hard to write a fucking book while this is going on.
Yeah. I mean, I've been getting some good work done, but it's been distracting. I mean, it's going to be, I guess the only other question I have, and like, we should do these more often, but I think like probably an hour is good. Like whatever. I don't know if anyone like has any specific questions. I've been reading your guys' comments. Thanks for.
I've been looking at the chat. I have no idea how many people are actually like watching or anything though.
Nah, that's all right. But I guess the one thing the one thing that's nice, right, is like you can organize people to do stuff. Like you can like kind of like. And like, I got a lot of people, like when I was doing the SpaceX stuff, I got people like pretty pumped up about stuff, and I got people to submit public comments, but like, that's like a little bit, like, it's a little bit detached. It's not, it's like kind of like, people feel like silly doing it or whatever. And like, I think what's really funny about this one is that like, yeah, like Alex Winter in particular, he's done a freaking awesome job of just being
shout out Alex Winter.
Yeah, dude, he's been awesome about like promoting it and like making sure it's getting media. And he's like, I'm talking to Ed. Ed's the guy. He's the OG hater. He's number one. And so like I've seen that, and like yeah, that organizing is really important. But like honestly, like if you've seen like some of like the spray paint graffiti is like who's gonna kill Elon Musk, like that stuff doesn't like that's not like if you talk to fanboys like for the longest time when people hate them they're always like oh it must be like a Jeff Bezos psyop to like take like but like there's always been that there, but I think it's like yeah you can organize people and it gets better, but like some of the stuff is going to organize anyway because the Cybertruck, like making fun of the Cybertruck happened naturally, right? And this is like so it's nice because there is organization, but also like people do understand that Tesla is a brand that's whose profits make Musk wealthy. So it's like this, it's this very natural. I think for a lot of people that are frustrated and don't know what to do, and they see this fuckery going on, I think it and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you see this a lot. It's like a very natural thing for people to do. Like, yeah, I'm mad about this thing. I don't know what else to do. So like, I'm going to go scream at the people who buy and sell his cars. Like, fuck that. I think I find that really interesting. That's like anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I find it cathartic to go out on the street on Saturday at 11 a.m. at 4330 South Macadam Avenue in Portland, Oregon. And
you're going literally every weekend?
Yeah, I'm going every Saturday at 11. Yeah, go for a couple hours. There's more people. Well, so I mean, every weekend I've done it twice. I'll be there again. It is, Saturday mornings are historically a good writing time for me, so it's a little bit of a sacrifice. I probably shouldn't be doing it, but
no. You always have to make time for hating.
Yeah,
you know what we should do is we should do like I'm gonna come up and visit you for a second. We'll come do it.
You should.
We'll live stream. We'll
bring some friends.
Yeah. Dude, we'll live stream from like Kick or something, or we'll just go on our phones. We'll do it, and we'll just and we'll
we could go live on X the Everything app and see what happens.
Blaze your glory, man.
Yeah, we blaze our glory. That's right.
So,
oh man.
But, yeah, for anyone like watching, we had like Ed and I we had like discussed like I don't know, like I think both of us like have like too much stuff going on, but like we always we're like, oh, we want to do this project, and we like started up, and like after like when it was clear that Musk was gonna have a ton of influence, like I think you and I had talked about like, oh, we should do like a podcast, we should do whatever, and like it was something that I was like, well, both of us were like busy with stuff, and we'd be like, well, we could work on something or whatever. There's plenty of time. I think both of us, like, it sounds like everyone was like railroaded by like how much influence, not even influence, just like control he has over the whole situation. I think even knowing Musk, like the fact that he was able to bowl over Trump, and I don't know if it really is that Musk like, literally just annoys the shit out of everyone, or if Musk's brain is pudding, or sorry, if Musk's brain is pudding, or if Trump is like really gone. I think it's a little bit of both. But it really, I did not think that he was going to have this influence. So I think like him taking over is like really taking me by surprise, and like we got to do something. We got to all this other stuff.
It has, but I was just thinking about this earlier today. Actually, the best thing about this is that where else is there to go? Like, okay, so he's the co-president. I mean, he's basically functionally the president without even being elected. Like, there is nowhere to go but down. And I think that psychologically, especially in terms of the stock, like this whole thing, right? Like you and I have been trying to talk sense, and everyone's been like, oh, but the gumdrops and, lollipops that await, beyond the next rainbow. And like, there was always some narrative about that, right? But like, it's been 8 years of full self-driving, 8 years, and like, okay, so like, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm going to get like a place to stay in Austin, in June and like see what's really happening down there. Because if they actually do that, like it's going to be bonkers. Like, but whatever, like it can't save the company. He's out of moves. He's out of moves. And he's out of moves, and he's at the top. And I think it's the at the top part that is the biggest problem for him, because he's always been able to escalate it, but he's in the White House with both his hands on the basic controls of the federal government, and he's promising a race of humanoid robot slaves that will usher in an era of superabundance where nothing will cost anything. Like we're literally right? This is where, the feds busted and you've got the Coke on
Well,
your
they were
face
so
and you're saying
like,
hello to my little friend. Like, where do you go? That's it.
right,
You've got
yeah.
the world and everything in it. Like Scarface, like what next?
And then that's why I pointed out. I'm glad that you pointed out too to your larger following and whatever is like, yeah, I mean, like Tesla has extracted whatever like short-term profits that it will, and in automaking like, traditionally is basically like break even on a return on investment capital basis over like a long period of time, multiple market cycles. And like, but every other thing he's done, it's like honestly been the same fucking scam over and over again. Solar City, he wasn't the CEO, but he pulled a ton of strings, like whatever. It's always been like, right, you promise these big revenue growths, you whatever, you get a bunch of equity, then you take some of that out, you borrow against it, you move into the next thing. He like took money from SpaceX, from a NASA contract, and like tried like plug holes in Solar City as it was, swirling the drain. And it's like, oh shit, well, this is gonna fuck me up. So then he like rolls it all into Tesla, and then he starts spinning off all these other things, rolls some of it back into SpaceX. He does the AI thing. But like the thing is like if all those businesses like require ongoing capital, whether it's an investor writing you a check or dilution that goes to pay for salaries and all that stuff, like there's no true economic profits that can backstop Musk's wealth. If Musk was worth on paper $10 billion or something, you'd be like, okay, well, you could rejigger it and that you could justify it from like a discounted cash flow standpoint. That wealth he's worth it's simply not. It doesn't exist. He's already sold a bunch. He has a bunch of out on margin debt. So the thing is, like, to your point, Ed, there's only this is the end game. There's no galactic empire you can take over afterwards. What he's done, and this is what I believe that you look at Tesla's equity, right? And we can help hit it and whatever, and it can go down. But like at the end of the day, like I think he kind of knows explicitly that like, hey, these sales are going to go to dog shit. And like we have not come up with a new model and there's no real plan and people are going to sell the stock and I won't be loved or I'll go, my whole, I think that like, for him, it's actually probably a logical trade, right? Fraudsters always do this at the end of their arcs. They always go as big as they can. Yeah. And I think my suspicion is that if you're going into a dying company, you've got all this equity and you can cash out as much of it as you can and buy Twitter, for example, or you can buy the federal government, and you break up the federal government and you wreck every other publicly traded company in the world. People won't remember you as the failure. You'd be like, oh, well, I'll be the guy that like, turned the United States into like a interconnected series of like city states. Like I think that's the only out. That's the only out, and it's not going to work. Like he will blow up, and he will like he's going to blow up this year in some way. There's no way this pace is unsustainable, and I'm excited. And that's why I like that. I like the movement, and I need to commit to go and yell at people at Tesla because that would be fun.
Yeah, no, it is fun. And I don't know, like I feel like I've been doing this so long and it's felt like walking uphill in the snow for a really, really long time. And it's so cool to see people motivated, right? Like taking it seriously, taking the guy seriously, like wanting to understand him better and being excited when they learn that like he's vulnerable. Like they thought that he wasn't. Right. They thought he was just like all the other billionaires, and he's not. And so again, like seeing that, like knowledge is power. And with the internet, we have the ability to spread knowledge in unprecedented ways. And again, I struggle with doom scrolling. Like I don't think anybody doesn't really. Like if you pay attention to anything, like it's very easy to get stuck in this thing where you're just sort of consuming. And I think, people, for me at least, like the internet has been always like this really good thing of like, someone has to be producing and people have to be consuming. And like, it's easy to kind of just do one or even the other. Right. And even as someone who, if you get into writing or blogging or posting or whatever, like it's easy to post all the time and not kind of be reading what other people are posting and things like that. And I think like finding a balance with that is good because, Elon is the epitome of like one guy with 130 million, sort of followers who not just the followers, but followers who are like conditioned to accept everything always.
Yeah, and this is perhaps nothing breaks the myth of the right. So like the meritocracy is always like right. Like we've always known it's bullshit. But like I think people still kind of inherently believe it's like, oh well, if you're a billionaire, you must be like exceptionally smart or whatever. Like not that like you're probably kind of smart at something, but you're also probably unethical and you got lucky, right?
But like okay, so
But he's a
yeah,
shit poster, and that's the best part about it. He has the most followers, and he is bad at posting, like objectively bad at posting, and I love it.
but also, I mean, let's talk about the masculine energy thing too. I mean, like Elon cannot handle right. Like for me, like again, like taking accountability is like a very fundamental part to it, not just being a man or whatever, but like just to being someone who should be respected and looked up to,
Yeah.
you know. And that the fact that so many people have been seduced by a guy who just can't do that in the most basic way, and like who responds to critics not by even trying to understand any of the criticism ever, even and again even when you burn $2 billion on your stupid alien dreadnought thing and you end up making cars in a tent by hand, and you say publicly like humans are underrated. Well,
Yeah.
they're by you.
Yes.
The rest of us don't really underrate humans because we rely on them every day. Like they love us and we keep them accountable. And like, we have relationships with them that mean something. Like the idea that we would even say humans are underrated, like if you live any kind of normal life, it's just goofy. And so, I think like, again, like, we have to deal with Elon, but we also have to deal with sort of the underlying, the blind spots that have allowed him to kind of creep up on everyone. And I think that just like not appreciating each other, to be real cheesy and sappy about it. This is supposed to be a gathering of the haters, but
No, I think that's right. I think that's like and like kind of going back to like right, like walking, trudging through snow and there's a chance to do something. Like I agree that's like the exciting stuff and like when stuff happens, when stuff is like possible, but like I don't know, like I like with how much time like I spent on a particular project and like right, like going back and looking at it and be like, you have some successes along the way. You get a mention here. You get like, you help, you bring something up that like is right after the fact or whatever. But like, I guess I've learned to appreciate the journey for what it is because you go back and look and then like, right. So I think to your point, it's like, people can say, oh, how could we have possibly predicted it that he was going to whatever? And it's like, no, these signs are all there. And you're not just saying, oh, I knew this. I'm like, oh, here is 8,000 words that I've written on this specific topic dated 6 years ago. And I think you've got like I think and like that's the hater crown, man. It's like you can go back and like point at your book, right? And like, hey, all this stuff was there, and like these systemic problems like were stuff
who
I
are you
out.
calling a hater, sir?
Yeah,
I beg your pardon.
So
yeah, no, I think we all need to just like hate it, be a little more comfortable with hating. And again, like, I think that was kind of the thing that really, one of the things that tipped me off was just that being labeled a hater, right? Like if you have any kind of criticism, you're a hater. And that love, means that you never criticize ever. And like, struggling with, older brother who had addiction issues, like it became clear to me, like, that's not, I mean, whatever, it wasn't all immediately clear. It was a, difficult thing, on both sides of that equation. But, I learned through the process of that, love is not just accepting unconditionally always. Like love is very often about, saying like, I expect more from you than this. Like, I hold you to this high standard. And I certainly expect, the people in my life that love me, I count on them to hold me to a high standard, not just, say that everything I do is wonderful, because it's not true. None of
right.
none of us that, are perfect. Right. We all.
Right, and I think this gets to people where people I think a lot of like leftists have kind of like fetishized like, well, the only revolution is like has to be like violent or whatever, and like I don't like going there immediately, but we also have to like recognize, and this is kind of goes back to the vandalizing point, is like at some point, right, if the risks become as severe as they are, like first you write a lot of posts, right? Then you call your congressperson, and then you show up at a dealership, and then you show up in protest, and then when the police try to push you away, you stand your ground, and then at some point, right, like all those actions, they're not like explicitly violent, right? But like if you're standing blocking traffic, like you're physically preventing something from going somewhere else. Like you don't want to call that violence, but each of those is like a physical, like you're pushing physically against the harm, and that has to reflect the harm that it has to others. Because it's like, yeah, if you had like actual Nazis that were like, rounding up people, they're gonna take them away to camps and like shoot them and stuff, then like you are morally obligated to like protect those people with your life and whatever. And like, so I guess, like I said, you don't want to go and like, I'm not gonna cry tears over people. Like I am gonna laugh crying tears that guy's spray painting the dick on the Cybertruck. I'm not going to advocate for it yet because I don't think we need to. I think we can make fun of them, but like, I don't know, like I don't think you have to go there. But like, you also just know, like if you're getting someone that has the power of the state and is shield themselves from any sort of accountability, that like if the harm they're causing becomes so drastic that like at some point like your actions become, and they just are what they are. Like you don't want to advocate for like, violent, bloody revolution in the streets just yet or anything like that. But like, you have to like accept that like if you're facing against something that's evil and wrong and you can do something about it, then like it's your obligation to do something. And for now, you can post and make fun of people and show up and have silly signs and make them cry and feel silly.
Test drives and waste their time. There's a lot of things you can do non-violently that make it. And again, I think, I sort of talked about, you see people doing the Luigi posting thing, and it's like, that is, and again, like people can respond, people don't have the politics they want. I'm not, I've never set myself up as anybody else's, moral or political leader. But like, that is a fantasy of an individual sort of through an extreme act, right? In your mind, was solving the problem. I actually think collective action is better than that for like a whole bunch of reasons. And I would rather see everyone do a little bit. Like, I think that's what makes a sustainable society, is when you have a society where everyone wants to do a little bit every day to make things to get toward a little closer to the world that they want. That's the only way that anything has ever really happened. And, I think that fantasizing about someone else taking care of this for you is a really intrinsic part of the problem, I think, of where we are.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And like, yeah, like I think the oh, nice. I see the comments there. I'm not saying it's violent. I'm saying you're physically asserting yourself, which is important. And I think that is important. I want to make that distinction. Like, I think, yes, I agree. Like, yes, just disrupting, protesting, going on strike is not inherently violent. But I'm saying like if it's bad enough and people get mad enough and you're going against bad enough people and you sit there and protest, at some point they're going to turn the water cannons on you, right? Like, that's if you get to the bad enough road. And that's like, right. And so that's like where we say, like, you don't want to go for that, because I don't think you have to necessarily, and especially with that, like, you don't want to, like, I don't think advocating for that does any good, because I think you can accomplish a lot just by, and again, like, just really quick, you're to the point with Luigi, like, I like dark humor. I don't mind jokes about whatever. Like, I'm fine. Like, but like, yeah, I was really taken aback by that, because I'm like, I'm not gonna like shed like a particular amount of tears for this guy versus the tons of people that die from not getting healthcare coverage or whatever. But like, I don't know, like, he's gonna get replaced by another cog, and I don't, like, I understand why people have that frustration. I understand why it gets that reaction, but like, that took me back, and I'm a person that's like pretty jaded to that kind of content. I was like, I can't believe how excited people are for it. And that shows you that, like, I think that's a very strong and in a way correct and astute observation to how little control people have of their lives versus like billionaires who can get away with anything. That's an expression of that. I'm not saying it's good. It just is what it is.
But again, all of this is what gives, right, knowledge power, right? When you can tell people, hey, like, Elon is vulnerable. Anything that hurts Tesla as a business, right? Like, and again, like, some people may take that to people can again, come up with all kinds of ways to do that. I don't think it needs to be violent. And I think there's always the risk of losing legitimacy, right? Like when there's violence and kicking off a cycle of right, like violence almost always just leads to more. And I think that, once you crack that can, it's real hard to go back. And so that's kind of why I'm just like on a very basic level, really, I think we can do a whole lot. And again, I think what's inspiring to me is the idea that like when you explain it to people and they understand it, like that knowledge has power. And so I think if anything, like if you don't know what else to do, just tell people about this stuff, right? Like explain that, like, yeah, you're gonna lose money if you sell your Tesla, but you're gonna lose more if you wait to sell it, right? Yeah. Like the best deal you're gonna get on that car is today.
Yeah,
and
yeah, you're gonna speculate over $5,000 if you'll be like, you have like if you can frame it as like, hey, you accomplished something today. It's like, hell yeah. And I will maintain that the best piece of anti-Tesla and cyber and especially Cybertruck propaganda I've seen that happened totally naturally, nothing to do with Elon really directly, was those like very early on, those kids on the bike that got that guy to just like
that was so good. Yeah,
he was like yelling slurs at them and stuff, and it was like there was so much like that was inherently revealing about the kind of guy that buys the truck. Like that was like made, and so all those guys had to do was like that guy like sounded like a little bit unhinged. Don't get yourself hurt, but like those kids got a reaction out of him that like negatively polarized the brand. It went viral. It really explained the essence of the kind of guy that buys a Cybertruck, and they didn't have to commit a crime. They didn't have to smash a window. They didn't have to threaten to kill someone. They didn't have to like whatever. They just like laughed at someone. And I think that's a really powerful like reminder for that. So
yeah, no, and I mean, look, like, people don't need to lecture me about civility, right? Like I started out this whole thing trying to do, quality journalism and write some op-eds and do some TV hits and do, you know what I mean? Like I've been radicalized and at the point where I'm like, clearly, I don't want to encourage or endorse any kind of violence, or even I don't want to explicitly endorse property destruction. But I will say, just as a matter of like trend forecasting on a basic level, that's where this is going. Yes, you know what I mean? That is 100% where this is going. Like boycott and divestment is a stop on a train line. And I just think it's a stop that is probably better for most people if we take that stop. We have a chance to take that stop. We have a chance to really remove Elon in a pretty meaningful way. It's not going to solve all our problems, but like that is something. And I think that even
the board of Tesla could fire him tomorrow. They could have a meeting and he could be out the door tomorrow.
I would not hold my breath for that particular outcome. Right? But yeah, it could.
But like, no, it's not like it's like they could be like, okay, well, we're like, I just talked to my lawyers and like, also like, why do I keep getting asked about Sig Heils? Like, whatever. Like, I mean, that could happen, and just like, you don't want to rule it out because it's possible, right? Just like, well, I don't know, like make it. You have enough employees quitting, and then you're like, oh, am I doing my job as a board member if I'm letting stores get vandalized like constantly because everyone hates the CEO, and like literally the only thing I have to do is fire the CEO who like doesn't do anything? Like, I don't know, like at some point you get to that point. I think you have to like start opening the door for those scenarios that is going to be like something that you can open.
Yeah, and happen tomorrow, like 30 years, a great like prestige TV show about how the board with no spine finally, like, what is it going to take for them? Like after all, right? Like, wasn't a Nazi salute? Go down the list. I
mean, it's going to be cowardice, right? Like people are like, oh, well, they back them no matter what. I mean, they do it because they're cowards. So at some point, if the consequences or the uncomfort is like, if the coward's route is to kick them out, and they'll do it. I mean, like that's just like cowards.
But that's what look like. This is something that we need to make them worry about and agonize over. Oh, yeah. For us, like for us, the one of our strengths is that we don't have other options. Again, like there's a peaceful stop on this train line, and then there is what lies down the tracks. And it's 2 years. 2 years is a very long time before we even get to vote again. And again, we didn't vote for Elon in the first place. What is to lead us to believe that is, you know, and again, our elected leaders are also, and I get that they don't have a ton of power necessarily, but they're not really, right? Where is and I post about this on both sides, but like, who is going to be the leader that realizes like, hey, you don't just have to donate to my campaign. I will show up at these protests and I will endorse this as a movement because I actually care about getting something done in this country and not just funding my next campaign.
But I mean,
who's going to do that?
The Dems have been showing some more pizzazz. We just need we need to push them too.
Yeah, they're it's winter. Everything, you know, starts up a little cold.
Yeah,
gotta warm up before that heater comes on. Good Lord.
So,
okay, well, yeah, no, and I will say, I mean, AOC is the only person I've seen who's had the rhetoric of you can go and do things yourself. Yes. And I think that to me is what cuts through the crap here. Like, you can say a million things about
dude, she's going to be the next president of the United States if Trump doesn't die first, whatever. That's her. I'm telling you, it's happening.
We'll see. It'll be an interesting few years either way.
So, but all right, man, we should do more of these. Leave comments. I'm not gonna tell you to like and subscribe.
This is my random ass YouTube account. Go look at my other videos of, like, you know, the video of the swap station in 2015, like the diesel generators and stuff. But, the footage that didn't get stolen by some random minivan of kids. There's some minivan somewhere that a kid stole my little camera. He's got hours of like time lapse footage of the battery swap station.
Oh, like
I'm sure it's all gone back from 2015, from a decade ago. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So
if you're that kid, let me know. Hit me up.
Yeah, he's probably on Team Doge.
If you stole a time lapse camera at Harris Ranch 10 years ago, hit me up on Blue Sky.
Dude, it's big balls. I'm telling you, that's him.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But anyone listening, we did this because we used to do these like Twitter Spaces, and there's like no good replacement. So I guess I don't know, we'll do these occasionally, but like I like having other people be able to like call into the show. But I don't know.
Well, so I guess maybe I haven't done a stream in such a long time. I think we could do this again, and we could potentially have at least maybe a couple other people on.
Okay.
So maybe we'll try and do that in the future. But
right,
this was fun in any case. If we only did it this one time, I had a good time.
Well, I mean, like the 69th chamber, like much like the Wu-Tang Clan, is it comes when it comes and it goes when it goes.
I think next time, the funnier bit, and I realized this after I posted this, so we'll do it next time, is Elon Hader's local 42069.
Nice.
And we can do like the whole union bit, and it'll be fun.
Oh yeah. I wanted to talk. You're glad this didn't happen because I saw someone talking about dock workers. I've got a bunch of stories about union dock workers, good and bad. So
awesome.
I'm pro union, but we should do that next time.
Yes. Okay. Great. Right, thank you everyone for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed, got something out of it, and appreciate you. Bye.
Cheers, Ed.